I believe, based on the clock, we're 11 minutes away from entering hour number 20. I believe. Senator Ted Cruz not wavering in his marathon floor speech against Obamacare, and now for the first time, only days from the October 1st kickoff of the federal health care exchanges, we're learning what the insurance plans may cost. Now, Senator Cruz says those prices are driving many Americans to actually drop their coverage. This from earlier here.
Many of the young, healthy people I talk to have told me they plan to go without insurance. People who currently purchase individual plans because the coverage will be too expensive and the fine for most of them is much less than the coverage. Mr. President, Obamacare was told to the American people, if you like your health coverage, you can keep it. We now know that promise was simply, objectively, 100% false.
That was from 5:38 this morning, and that really goes to the heart of his entire argument now. This story is so big, Neil Cavuto went to Washington. Senior Vice President of Business News and anchor of Your World with Neil Cavuto. Neil, good morning to you.
Hey, Bill.
What do you think? I mean, do you get a sense that the Cruz Marathon is having an impact or not?
Well, I don't think it's going to do anything to derail the Senate vote that would be to separate this defunding measure from a budget resolution that would keep the government open another few months. But I do think it has had a measurable impact on people who are now just beginning to get a sense of and are getting scared about the health care law itself. They're discovering via reports and studies and surveys that premiums are going up. They're going up markedly, that for young people in particular, the means by which we pay for all of this, their premiums are going up smartly, and that this is not panning out to be what it was. Now, the president had always said, if you like your coverage and you like your doctor, you can keep them. What he left out was that you might have to pay a lot more for that, and that's what's evidencing itself.
Yeah, on that point, you know, we're now learning about some of the prices for the healthcare exchanges. From the Wall Street Journal, it says young, healthy buyers will likely pay more than they do at the moment,
Right.
while older, sicker consumers should get a break. What more is in that pricing?
Well, it could be substantial. I mean, for younger people now, it could probably average 15 to 20% more than they're paying now. But keep in mind, it does nothing to erase the equation here of young people, by and large, not inclined to buy health insurance. That's the age when you feel you're, indestructible, nothing's going to happen to you. It's only when you get to be more of a geezer like me that these issues become paramount. And I think young people have been sort of pushed into this with the notion that you'll try it, you'll like it, and you'll be the better for it. Obviously, their response is, look, even for those of us who have coverage, switching over to this will mean we're paying a lot more for that coverage. No, thank you. The next specter will be, penalties and the like that will make this even less appetizing. So it is a mess. It's a mess.
On that point, the incentive for a young person to buy drops off considerably.
Sure.
I mean, even just yesterday, Bill Clinton in New York said this law only survives if young people buy into it. And based on this reporting here, that price will be higher. The incentive, you would assume, will be lower to sign up.
Well, and you also think, Bill, of the delays, what's been happening with all the key delays, certain companies and sectors that are, getting passes and exemptions and delays as far as when they have to kick in. But what's important about the stuff that's been delayed or pushed back are all the means by which we pay for this. And that is rather telling, because the denominator, if you will, the stuff that's going to, support this is falling apart on them, and it's being pushed back further and further and further. And so let's say they come up with some sort of a backroom deal here that calls for not defunding it but delaying it another year, or the exchanges another year, or your participation, forced or otherwise, another year. You are only delaying the inevitable. So people who say, whoopee-yay, this is great news, you're only delaying the reaper here, because the cost goes up exponentially with that delay. And that's what people fail to see.
And to that point, Medicare cuts delayed, employer mandate delayed, subsidy verification delayed, out-of-pocket caps delayed. 2,000 businesses and unions get a waiver. Congress they get subsidies to cover their own tail. So that's all going on on one hand. On the other hand, you have the threat of a federal government shutdown, possibly Monday or Tuesday. Is it your sense that happens or not at the moment?
Well, if we face that, it'll be because we've left little room in the calendar for wiggle room here. And many are blaming Cruz for this, saying that he is ostensibly, by protesting this now, pushed back key votes in the Senate. I hasten to add, Bill, as you might know, that these votes were being pushed back in the Senate just to complicate and make life miserable for Republicans in the House, because the intention all along was for Harry Reid to dump this in the House's lap sometime Sunday or Monday at the cusp of this deadline. So Cruz has nothing to do with that. And by the way, I might also point out, it is a bit of chutzpah to start saying all of a sudden Congress is bemoaning one senator's filibustering because it's going to make them late. It's the first time I've ever heard them concerned about a timeline. But having said that, we will probably have a partial, if not a temporary shutdown. If so, it would be our 20th since 1977. That is not so unprecedented. But we'll get through this. We'll get over this. It is not the end of the world.
So there is some drama in this as we look to the next 4 or 5 days. Neil, we'll check you out later today. It's good to have you back on the Hill. They fear Cavuto when you show up, don't they? Don't they?
Absolutely.
I knew they did.
Shaking in their boots.
Right on. 4 o'clock later today in your world, look at the guests you'll have lined up. I mean, McCain's on, Rand Paul's on, you name it. Also, later tonight, we'll talk to Heritage Foundation President Jim DeMint, investor Foster Freeze on the Fox Business Network. That hits at 8 o'clock Eastern Time.
Fantastic.
Cavuto's got a busy day.
Man, he sure does.